perspective. We all have it. Our take on life. The way we filter the world around us. And not just the world, but people. Relationships. Family. This lens affects how we see ourselves. Others. Even God. And when it comes to relationships, what you see is what you get.
Last week we started our series, What You See is What You Get, and we talked about focusing on God and understanding who He really is. Okay, and tonight we're going to look at the second part to the verse that we looked at last week. And I think the question we're going to look at tonight is, do I matter? And I think a lot of us in here have asked that question at some time in our life. And if we haven't, we will eventually ask that question. And we think that the opinions of others kind of shapes who we are. And so we let other people, our coaches, our teachers, our parents, our friends, determine who we are. And so we don't look to God for the ultimate answer. And we don't figure out why I matter. We don't figure out from God why we matter. And so tonight we're going to look at this topic, and I think a lot of us think that we have to be famous. The world tells us, our friends tell us, people around us, they tell us that you have to be famous in order to matter in this world. And so, I don't know about you, but I've noticed people try to do too much, I think, to get famous. And one of the examples that I have for you tonight is American Idol. How many of you guys watch American Idol, or you watch The Voice? Okay, it's a rip-off of American Idol. But the people come from all over the country, and they go to their auditioning spots, and they wait in lines for hours, and for some of them days, if they bring a tent and they stay in the tent overnight. But they stay. Their purpose in American Idol isn't to get friends and to, meet new people and that type of thing. Their goal when they go to American Idol is to get famous, and they want people to recognize them, whether they sing really good or whether they sing really bad. And I think a lot of us can think of some of the bad American Idol auditions. But I think for most of the people that audition for American Idol, their goal is to be the next Timberlake for the guys. For the girls, your goal is to be the next Underwood. You want to be someone that's famous. And another example is YouTube videos going viral. Okay, you watch YouTube, sometimes I spend way too much time on YouTube watching videos of people doing stupid things. And they get millions and millions, billions. There's only 7 billion people, and I doubt they can get 1 billion. But that's close. That would be a really close video. But that's dumb. But people do like the strangest things in trying to get their video to go viral. And I don't know about you, but I've seen a lot of crazy videos of people doing things that we're not even going to talk about tonight. But another example of people trying to get famous and trying to feel like that they have some type of ownership in this world and to feel like they matter is they think that their entire life should be a reality show. And they think that they think that they deserve one because they want the cameras on them, they want the popularity, they want everything, videotaped. And one of the examples I have for you tonight is Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. How many of you guys are familiar with that show? Here Comes Honey Boo Boo. This show, in case you have no idea what I'm talking about, it's about a 7-year-old girl or 8-year-old girl that she's a beauty pageant participant.
She's like 6.
She's a beauty pageant participant, and it's a reality show, and they catch the entire family, and they try to catch her doing something stupid, or whether it's what she says or what she some type of action that she does. And I have a clip for you to kind of give you an idea of what Here Comes Honey Boo Boo actually is.
Mama!
What?
What you doing?
Cooking? I try to cook at least every day of the week. You'll get the steps so you can help me. The deer aren't migrating like they used to be, and so nobody's hit a deer with their car, and we've not been called out to a deer call.
It's been a while since I done had roadkill in my belly. What is this?
It's for the skitty.
Ooh, hot.
Yeah. So, I mean, we try to make other kinds of food skitty. How many people want the ketchup and butter?
Me? I want butter, spaghetti, and ketchup.
I think the family favorite meal is skitty. We'll go get the butter out so we make this butter and ketchup mix.
It's butter, it's butter, it's butter.
All right, where's ketchup?
I don't know.
The kids like the ketchup and butter, and I was raised on the ketchup and butter mix. It's an old family recipe. Don't tell nobody anything. You put a little bit of butter in with the ketchup.
Ah!
Melt it in the microwave. It's pretty good.
Oh, that's so good. That's good.
I know. Everybody's got their own, type things to feed their own family. I'll feed them on about $80 a week, and that's just buying cheaply. Alana, how you tell if skitty's done?
When you throw it up on the roll and it sticks.
That's how you know it's
Can
done.
I do it?
Here, throw it.
Ooh, stick! Mama's sticking! Mama, there's stickies.
Yeah. All right, get down.
That's good.
Put your sugar bear. The skitty's done.
Shaggy!
Sugar bear!
Shaggy!
Just an idea of where Here Comes Honey Boo Boo actually is. But I think the common ground here for Here Comes Honey Boo Boo and the people that audition for American Idol and for you and for me is that we all want to become famous. We all want to matter. And I think that we think, and the world thinks, that fame does that to us. It tells the world that we do really matter. And last week we talked about how Jesus, he was in this place and he was answering questions from different figures, people in the Bible, and he was answering these questions. And this group of people called the Sadducees, who knew a lot about God, knew a lot about God's law, went over to Jesus and they said, Jesus, what is the most important thing that we should know? So they're saying, out of every single thing that you've taught us and everything that we know, what is the one important thing that we need to follow, the rule that we should follow, the one thing that we should really focus on in our lives? And Jesus answered the question. And it's on the next verse, I think, but he says, to love the Lord your God with all of your heart, with all of your soul, with all of your mind, and with all of your strength. And then he said, in the next verse, the second is this, love your neighbor as yourself. And the yourself part is what we're going to focus in on tonight. Because you see, Jesus has answered the question by saying, love God and love other people like you love yourself. And when Jesus answered the question, what matters most, Jesus actually addressed who matters most. Because in these two verses, he says, God matters most. Other people matter most. But he says that we matter as well. And so we talked about last week about loving God and how we can't really love God until we learn to see God for who he really is. And tonight, like I said, we're talking about loving ourselves. And if you hear me say that may sound kind of odd to you. If someone says, I'm working on loving myself right now, you may say, okay, that person's weird. I'm not going to hang around them, or I'm going to keep my distance from them because that's just a crazy thing for them to say. But see, Jesus here is actually talking about a healthier kind of self-love. A kind of love that leads us to see ourselves the way that God sees us. And that sounds easy. But you see, the problem here is that we typically allow other people We allow other people to determine how we see ourselves. We let other people try to come in and give their opinions about us, and we kind of run along with their opinions. But we never go to God, and we never ask God about these things. Because you see, we see ourselves through the lens of what other people say about us. And I think some of us in here are obsessed with your academic success or your athletic performance. You need that. You have to have that. Because you don't just want to succeed and you don't just want a good influence in your life, but you have to be outperforming everyone else. Because that's your way of thinking. If I do that, if I am smarter than everyone else and I do better than everyone else in school, then I really matter. And people will care about me. And ladies, some of you dress a certain way and post pictures and you hang out in a certain spot. So that guys, you know the spot because that's where the guys usually hang out and they go around and you're hoping to hear something like you look amazing today. Or you're hoping to get a compliment because whether or not you hear those words literally changes the likelihood of whether you see yourself as lovable or not. You have to hear those words, and if you don't hear them, you're like, man, no one appreciates me. I don't really matter. And guys, you do the same thing. You know, maybe you do 20 push-ups before your group of lady friends are going to come over and hang out with you, hoping that your friends can say, oh wow, you must work out, or you look really good. And see, some of us need to hear certain things before we allow ourselves to love ourselves. And we want to know if we really matter. And to be honest with these students, that's a natural question to ask yourself, is if I really matter. But you see, the problem here is, we just talked about it, the problem is you're going to the wrong places for the answer. You're going to other people and their opinions, when instead you should be going to God. Because you see, if we keep going to other people, and if we see ourselves through the judgments or opinions of others, we will never be satisfied. Because we think that we can't really see ourselves as valuable. We can't really love ourselves unless other people see us that way first. And we're going to talk about John tonight, and he was one of Jesus' disciples, and he dedicated his entire life in spreading Jesus' message to the world. And he actually started some churches, and he wrote letters encouraging people. See, John was excited about what he believed. He was excited to tell people about Jesus, but not everyone around him was excited. They weren't excited about Jesus. And actually, this was the time when John was around people that were associated with the Roman government. And just a history lesson for you guys, just a second, because I know you guys don't like history. At least some of you don't. If you do, you're weird. But I'm just kidding. It's no point of the sermon, I know. But the Roman government, they famously opposed to Christianity. Okay, they were known as the people that hated Christians. They abused and they tortured and they killed people that proclaimed to follow Jesus. And you see, John was arrested and he was banished to a remote island. And if John had been looking for approval in the eyes of others, he would have been sorely disappointed. Because you see, there were people who hated John because they hated Jesus. But that didn't keep John from doing what he was doing, and it didn't change what he had come to know was true. Because you see, we're going to look at Scripture, just one verse tonight, and it's 1 John in chapter 3, verse 1. And in this letter, John wrote towards the end of his life, and he says right here in verse 1, "How great is the love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God. And that is what we are." Think about that for a second. Read that scripture again. God chooses to call us children if we're following Jesus. And to make someone your kid is a commitment. You guys don't understand that yet, but when you have kids, you'll realize you made a commitment. which means we matter. Regardless of what we say or what we do, we really matter. And these commitments that we make when we have kids, it's like, it's regardless of what they do, we're still going to love them. And just a personal story here, I wasn't really athletic growing up, and I still am not athletic. I kind of want to be there at some point in my life, but I don't think I'll ever reach my dreams. But my senior year of high school, I was the manager, or some people will call me the glorified water boy, whatever it may be. I did my job as the manager. I did it with a passion. I loved doing what I was doing, and I hung around the sports teams all the time. I love sports, I just can't play them. And so I was the manager of the soccer, basketball, and baseball team. And during basketball season, it was coming up at the end of the year, and they do senior night. It's the last home game of the year for basketball. And the coach came up to me and he said, "Hey, do you want to dress out? You want to play in one game? Since you're a senior, it's senior night, you've been faithful to our program, do you want to dress out?" And at first I was a little hesitant. I said, "No, I don't. Have you seen me run? Have you seen the way I shoot a basketball? Yeah, no, I don't want to do this." And after a few days, and my friends were kind of like egging me on. They wanted me to do it, probably to make a fool out of myself so they can laugh and point fingers. But after a few days, I finally went to the coach and I said, "Okay, I'll do it. I'll dress out." And fast forward to game day. And this is a big deal. This is the last home game. We had a lot of seniors on the team. We were awful. We had, I think, 8 wins the entire year. We played like 35 games. It was awful. But we picked a team that was just as bad as we were. Okay, so we had a chance. And so it was a big night. A lot of people came out. It was a Friday night basketball game, and so the gym was packed. It was packed full of people. And as we ran out of the locker room to go in our shooting drills, I looked up in the bleachers and I saw my family. And part of me is saying, why are they here? They're going to watch me fall on my face, and they're going to watch me airball twice. They're going to watch me do these things, and it's embarrassing. But the other part, and this is kind of the point, they were there because they supported me and they loved me, and they wanted me to do well with this opportunity. And so I knew, even though I wasn't getting a lot of playing time or whatever, I knew that my parents, were looking at me and they were proud of me. Because I would look over and they were just smiling really big at me. And it's like, man, they're proud of me. And I see my dad talking to people, and as I'm sitting on the bench, I see him pointing at me, and because someone that doesn't know, they don't know who I am, and so I'm just like, okay, I'm not really popular anyway, and I'm not good at basketball. So, he's pointing at me and he's saying, "That's my son." And it's just, part of me was like, man, I just really proud. My parents are proud of me, and it just felt good. And I say all of that because maybe your parent, they don't say those things to you. They don't tell you how valuable you are. Maybe they don't claim you. Or maybe you walk around in school, you walk down the hallways, and you don't get people seeing you for who you really are. And they don't treat you like they treat everyone else. Maybe you don't get that. But my whole point tonight is to say that God sees you. And it's not about getting famous and having the opinions of others tell you if you matter or not. Because God sees you, and He's pointing down, just like my parents did in the bleachers, and He's saying, "That's my son." He's saying, "That's my daughter." Regardless of what you do with your life, or how you look, or what you say, or how your grades are, or how well or how bad you play basketball, God's still looking at you, and He says, "That's my son." To be claimed as a child of God, there's something about that that's so encouraging. And so I ask us the question tonight, what if the primary lens through which that you saw yourself was God's lens? And what is God's lens? It's seeing you as God's child. And in this verse that we talked about, God's saying, "I don't care what anyone else has to say, you are mine always." And the declaration means that we matter. Not by what other people are saying, but by what God's saying. He's saying we matter. And so nothing changes that, not our performance, our looks, our popularity. And when we see ourselves as God sees us, we begin to have a healthy love for ourselves. Because we know where our value comes from. And what if you realized, and what if you said to yourself, I matter because God says I matter. I want you to think about that. What if you said, I matter because, not anyone else, but God says that I matter. There's power in that. And I hope you are encouraged by that. And the thing I want most for you to realize is that there's a God who loves you so much, and He calls you His child. He knows you by name, and He declares you as one of His own. And because we live, and you live in a world where how other people see you determines how you live and what you say and how you think and how you behave, it may be difficult to remember what God says about you. So what I want you guys to do is to come up with a phrase that reminds you of how God sees you. Come up with a phrase that reminds you of how God sees you. And you're going to have an opportunity to do this during your small group time. But the whole point of this is to remind yourself that of not only what matters, but who matters. You are a child of God. And so pick something that reflects that. Maybe you write down something that says, my God loves me, so I can love me. Or maybe you write down something that says, I'm an accepted child of God. And you put it somewhere that you go every day, so you'll be able to see that phrase every day, so you're reminded that you matter because God says you matter. And maybe it's not something you write down. Maybe it's you go open up your notes app and you type something in that reminds you of how important you are because God sees you as being important. Maybe you type something up and you take a screenshot and you set that as your background, your home screen or your lock screen. So that every time you open up your phone, boom, it's right there in your face and it reminds you that you matter. But I want you guys to really think about this. Man, if you're down, if you think that you can't do anything or that you can never reach a level of success, you can never, seem like you fit into this crowd, you can't seem to do enough, remember that those opinions don't matter. Your goal isn't to do well so Sally or Joe will approve of you. Your goal is to worship God and to live your life out for God. Because God is pointing at you and saying, that's my son. That's my son. And I love him. I love her. And I unconditionally love them. And I will pursue them with everything that I have. Is what God is saying to us. The God of the universe. And so I want you guys to remember that you guys go into small groups.